Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Pick Top, Pulling Pits and Opinions with your host, Gunny G, where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts and on some social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a special guest, super famous in the presence of greatness, Mr. Rob with Hots and Cots. I'm telling you right now, I'm super excited about this session. Sir, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service coming on this, this little guy's podcast. It means a lot to me. Tell the listeners where you're from, duty stations, operations, T80 opportunities that you got in the military, and then obviously when you transitioned and where you're at now.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on this great podcast, this amazing podcast. So I enlisted into the Army Reserves in 2000. I was a junior in high school. I didn't know what I was going to be doing post high school. My parents gave me three options. You can go to college, you can get a job, or you can go to the military. Those are your options, but you can't just freeload. Um, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My dad was in construction. My mom, at the time, my parents were divorced. She was an office administrator for a doctor's office, and I didn't have the greatest home life, like direction wise. So, as the army recruiter for the reserves was like, "Hey, it's 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. You can do some deployments here and there, like TDY type stuff, whatever." And this was 2000, my junior year of high school. So I said, "Sure, let's do it." My dad and grandfather were Navy prior. They didn't get to me first. The Army did. And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." So I did it basic junior year of high school, came home, finished my senior year, and then I went and finished my AIT for personnel administration, which is, I don't know what that would be on the Navy side, but it was basically doing whatever it is paperwork wise. And then I graduated. I finished my final PT test on 9/11. As I was walking into the day room, that's when like everything was going down. And it's like one of the few times you saw folks gathered around the TV in the day room, just eyes wide open, wondering what was happening. So graduated from AIT. A couple days later, I got to my reserve unit and they said, "Welcome to your reserve unit. You're being deployed to Fort Stewart in Georgia," because we were a garrison support unit. So 3rd ID, Fort Stewart went forward. And then our unit was to maintain and keep base operations going. And I was working at the G2 level doing security briefs and such on Intel. And I did that. I did a couple deployments there, finished up my time in the reserves. And then I was in North Carolina and I saw a National Guard commercial. And National Guard was like, "Hey, you can support your community. You can still same thing with the reserves." And I was kind of missing it, didn't want to get out. So I was like, "Sure, let's do it." So I went and re-enlisted. The recruiter was like, "Hey, it's a new unit. You're not going to really probably deploy. You'll probably be fine." And then Big Army was like, "We're going to move you from that unit that you weren't going to get deployed in to this other unit, and we're also going to reclass you to a 92 Fox to be a fuel." So it was 2009. I should have known better, but it was like right in the middle of the surge for GWAT. Everyone was deploying. I mean, folks were getting extended, year and a half deployments. So I got deployed to Iraq. I was there for about a year between mobilization for Shelby and NTC, all that stuff. It was a little over a year. So I was doing bulk fuel transportation from Fob Falcon to the smaller Cobbs gathered around Baghdad airport and everything. So that was I got back and I finished up my time in 2014, got out as an E5, and I've been out since then. I enjoyed my time. I miss it. It really shaped my life. I owe a lot to the Army. It put me on a different trajectory for my life. Probably wouldn't be where I'm at now, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And I've been in the civilian workforce for that since then, and software development since then.
Rob, I'll tell you what. So you're a little short of 20 reserve time, or why didn't you finish?
Yeah, it wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't what I was wanting. It was becoming a full-time job at that point. Like I didn't want to do that anymore. Like I already had a full-time job. I wanted to I had a wife. I wanted to start a family, like start that, laying the foundation for that. And actually, I looked into going back in like through, I want to say it's like 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I looked into a direct commission program for the Army National Guard and Army Reserves. I put in my packet. I got my recommendation letters. I did everything I needed to do for direct commission. I was ready because I wanted to finish up my 20. I wanted to finish up my time. And then we ended up having, my wife got pregnant with our third child. And at the same time, the direct commission program, they froze the program. I got an email saying, "Hey, we froze the program. We're not doing it anymore until some unbeknownst time we'll reopen it." And I had my third kid, and I was like, I kind of lost. They kind of lost their moment to get me back in, just because I had it's just a lot with kids and family, and I'd have to go back through basic again and probably some sort of probably train up for direct commission. I'm not sure the details, but it didn't work out. Like it just wasn't in it. I'm still not opposed to it. Like if the right opportunity presents itself, I would reevaluate. But right now, it doesn't look like it.
Well, I'll tell you what, they definitely are missing out on a good soldier. I'll tell you what. Uh, so you were kind of in the reserve field, so not full time, but then it became full time for you. How was your transition back to the civilian sector after doing that a long time, full time after deployment? After deployment.
Yeah, it was. It had its challenges for sure. It's weird. Like after any deployment, being whether it's overseas or stateside, whatever it is, you're gone for a year. Life back home keeps going, and things don't stop. So you kind of have to readjust. Like your friends that you had before, their lives kept going. It changed. Going into the workforce was a little bit of an adjustment at times. I was pretty fortunate with the job that I had. It was a very small company at the time, so it wasn't too much of a readjustment getting back in. But I was also still trying to figure out what I wanted to do career-wise at that time. They were good jobs, they paid the bills and everything, but it wasn't my passion. It was just to pay the bills. So it wasn't too bad. I know I've heard stories it was a lot worse for folks, but for me, it wasn't anything crazy or out of the norm for me to readjust. Though I think the biggest component was just family and friends in that space.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for that. Well, so transition is different for everybody, but I got to ask one more time. I got to ask another question for it. Is how did you adjust going back into the family being gone so long?
So we know Jody, so it was very difficult for me coming back home in that time. So I it was coming back home at least from like Iraq. It was very hard in that sense because I my whole life got turned upside down. It was very hard. I was in a bad mental space of who I was, what I left, what I came back to. It was to be transparent, it was very hard for me in that time coming back from Iraq. And I think it was I was doing what I felt was I signed up to do. I was supporting my country. I was fulfilling my contract and everything that comes with being a soldier, whether it's or I mean everything that comes with being in the military, really. And then I came back home and I didn't have a wife anymore. Really, it was very complicated. It was, and it's you start really getting in your head of wondering, like, could I have done something different? Did I make the right decisions? So it took some time, and counseling was very helpful. The VA had choice options for me to help me and get me through that time in my life, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I like to weave things back in, so we're gonna bounce around a lot. So we're gonna right into the mental health aspect. Is
Yeah,
what did you
let's
struggle
do it.
with mentally, and who got you out of it outside the VA? Did you have something directly, indirectly? Who helped you facilitate that space?
Yeah, I wish I could remember his name. Gosh, I wish I could remember his name. He was a VA counselor, but knowing that my value, my worth, and who I am is more than just my failed marriage at the time. So that was beneficial, and I think also at the same time it helped me unpack things from growing up to really find my worth. We all have this baggage of what we think from growing up isn't problem because we're used to it. It's what we grew up with. But when you kind of take a step back and you look at it, and you're like, well, maybe that wasn't as quite as normal. It wasn't normal that I didn't have running water in my house for this span of time, or it wasn't normal to have like bugs and cockroaches in your house. So it's like things like that, taking a step back from and being with accountants, because when you're in it, you think it's fine. You think, okay, this is normal. There's other people like this, but when you really grow up, you unpack this stuff, this baggage, you realize, oh, it's not normal, and you start then finding all this stuff, finding who you are, you get your footing, and finding what your self-worth is.
Good. I tell you what, service members when they transition from active duty, I'm sure even from reserves, the reserve component's the same a little bit. They struggle with mission, mission, purpose, and those type of things. Provide them some insight, like, hey, this is what helped me. I know I might be different. It might be different for you, but this is what helped me. It might help you. Give them that tool for the toolbox.
You know, I can't speak for everybody. I could speak for me. Part of why I joined the military, and there's many reasons. I look back on my life, there's many reasons why I probably joined the military, but the one that sticks out is like I like giving back. I like helping people. And it's part of the drive and the purpose I find with Hots and Cots is that I'm finding my ability to help people and advocate for them to make things better for them. And I think, in my day-to-day job, I like my day-to-day job. Do I find it's going to be is it giving me purpose? Is it making a large impact at the end of the day? Probably not. But I feel like what I've been doing with Hots and Cots for the last 2 years, it is making an impact on people's lives. And I see that in emails. Like I just got an email today from an NCO for something I'm working on, and he's like, "I appreciate everything you're doing and being there and advocating for us." And I don't really get that in my day-to-day job and the impact I'm in that capacity. So for me, finding that purpose is what is important to you. And I think that's going to be different for everybody. Maybe that's family. Maybe you want to be a stay at home parent, mom or dad, and you find purpose in that. That's great. I think you have to sit with yourself and figure out what you want in life and what that purpose is going to be.
That's good, Rob. I appreciate. I struggle. I mean, I'm sure I struggle with it on a daily, finding purpose and what is my purpose, and my faith helps me with that, right? And I'm sure with others, it's the same thing. So find purpose for those listening. Find purpose. You're obligated to something. Somebody wants you here. That's purpose enough. So thanks for that advice, Rob. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. You mentioned Hots and Cots. We got to talk about it. You know, I'm
Yeah.
in the presence of greatness, right? A software developer, an app developer, and super famous on Twitter. I mean, it's my pleasure to be in the presence of greatness in Hots and Cots. How did you get to where you're at, and then Hots and Cots? How did that come about, anyways?
Yeah. So, so when I first joined the reserves and my first deployment working the G2, I like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really have a direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like my dad was in construction. I just felt like that's what I was going to do was be working in the sun till I'm whatever, however years old, getting beat up by the sun. But I was fortunate that the NCO that I worked with, he took me under his wing. He had an IT consulting business. Now, keep in mind, this is like early 2000s. This stuff is very new. There wasn't really social media or anything of that nature. MySpace was 2003. So he took me under his wing. He got me familiar with computers, setting up Nipper and SipperNet, email accounts, like all the kind of the basic tech stuff. And it kind of resonated with me, and I stuck with it. And then I eventually fast forward to I think 2009. I'm not even sure now. I got my bachelor's in information technology finally after I graduated high school 2001. So I mean, it shows you college wasn't my thing until much later in life, and I didn't get to go to college really because of the Army. Army got me to college, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I stuck with information technology. I started getting deeper into computers and working with that. And then eventually 2019, I wanted to get into software development. And, the military gives us a lot of skills, that drive to overcome obstacles and barriers in life. And I just picked up software development. I self-taught myself how to do software development. I grabbed onto some videos. I didn't go to school for it. I understood some basic concepts, and I self-taught myself software development and got into app development. And I released some apps here and there just kind of for fun, and they didn't really take off. Everyone wants to have that one app that takes off and they become a billionaire, like whoever created Instagram and Meta bought them out or whatever. So I did that. I just started playing around with apps, and then 2023, the government accountability report came out that talked about the Army barracks, and it drew and it paralyzed these barracks issues to not just Army but to other branches, and the kind of the discrepancies in how barracks are rated, how commands view barracks, and the quality of life issues. I was chatting with a friend who's also was prior service, and he's like, you need to create an app that is like Yelp, where you can rate your barracks and dining facilities. Like, that would be tremendous for those living in the barracks. Hots and Cots was born kind of. I started writing code and got it out and shipped it, and it's taken off from there since and 2023, and it'll be 2 years this year. It was late 2023, so I think October will be 2 years.
Wow. Is Hots and Cots like an anonymous tool where I can report like this barrack sucks or this chow hall is not that good?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's all branches, and it's like Yelp or Google Map reviews or Amazon products. Like when you review everything these days, like you go to the dentist or you go somewhere, you're gonna get a text like an hour later saying, "Hey, how rate your experience? What was it like?" So you can, it's essentially the same thing. Yelp for barracks. If your barracks is great, you can give it 5 stars. You can upload a picture or a video, and then you pick your installation, and then you can answer some additional questions. Like if you're reviewing a product on Amazon, you could say, was this product to your liking, or did those shoes fit you like it says it did, or did that shirt fit you? You can do something similar with Yelp, where how many where was the laundry located? Was it on your floor? Was it in your building? Was it in your room? Was the pest? What type of amenities do you have in your room? And those are all optional questions. Like the barrier for a review is very low. It's like 30 seconds. Everyone has a smartphone. I wanted it to be quick. And you can rate your facilities, your dining facilities, and or I think it's, what is it, mess hall? What is it in the Marines? Is it chow
Chow
hall,
hall.
mess hall, or galley? Is that it?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So and you can, so it's all branches, and that's what it's for. And but it's also for like the negatives. So if it's a 1 star, it's a 1 star. Because at least on the Army and from my understanding, the Marines and Navy and all branches is if you're going into the barracks or the dorms or whatever it may be, you don't know what your rooms are going to look like. You don't know the conditions. They may be great, they may be bad, but if you're a company, if you're going with a family, you may get off post housing. If you're going to be on post housing, you can see the type of the layout of the house. You can see the work order history, but you don't get that. Whatever you get is what you're going to get if you're junior enlisted. That's kind of the appeal of Hots and Cots is like if you're PCSing or you're going to a new station, you can go look it up and see what it looks like and kind of get the vibe, the kind of feel of what others are saying about that installation.
I like that. I didn't know that you do also do base housing.
I do, yeah, you can do on-base housing. I don't do like the layout, but if you are PCSing or your family, you have those options to get that information. But you can, with Hots and Cots, you can rate your on-base housing and such for sure. There's a little toggle that says, "Is this a housing review?"
Well, I'm going to be on there for when I PCS from Washington State and their housing. I would have liked to known that none of the base housing had AC, and it's only 100 degrees in the summer.
Yeah,
So we're freaking
right.
just dying with our windows open. That would have been nice to know. I would have been living off grease. Um, but that'll
Yeah,
be
you
on the
could have
review
made a
for
different
sure.
decision of where you wanted to go, possibly.
Right. That would have been a big decision, right? Because my wife was pregnant at time with number five, and it was miserable at night. Oh my goodness. Anyways,
Oh
but that's
yeah.
good to know, Rob. I appreciate that. Now I know when I PCS you, that's going to be on my review. So anybody PCS in Washington, just know there's no AC in base housing. 90% of it. But
Well, don't worry then. You'll fit in with the folks in the barracks.
right, right. I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad too bad, or excuse me, too bad. But Hots and Cots, you're in Congress now. You're meeting up with big wigs in the army. Tell me about that. How did that blow up so quick?
Yeah, so I did. I met with um so when I launched Hots and Cots, I didn't think I I figured it would catch on. I didn't think it would catch on the way it has. I figured it would probably catch on, and then DoD or somebody would knock on my door and say, "Hey, you got to shut this down. You can't be doing this." But so far, it hasn't happened. So December, I got a chance to meet with some members of Congress and talk about it, and I will also have these one-off meetings with members of Congress, like staffers and people of Congress as well. But it was when the Secretary of the Navy went to Guam and he saw the barracks conditions. And this is the disconnect that we see. So the Secretary of the Navy, he's not prior service. He was a civilian, And I think most civilians think military, they're going to have good accommodations. They may not necessarily have like Kardashian type style barracks or rooms or whatever, but they're going to probably have good accommodations. They're going to have good food. And that's not really the case. So if you, I spoke with a good friend of mine, and he didn't realize that the conditions of the military barracks were as bad as they were when I shared with him this stuff. So Secretary of the Navy shows up to Guam and is appalled by the barracks there. He can't believe that the service members are living in those conditions. So I made a tweet, kind of a, it was honestly, it was a fire and forget type tweet. Like, hey, Secretary of the Navy, I'm doing Hots and Cots. I'm doing this. Let's work together to improve quality of life, improve barracks and such for our service members. And then I was actually going camping with my kids. And I kind of, like I said, I fired it off as I was packing up my truck to go. And then I didn't think anything of it. And then I got a message saying, hey, check your DMs from somebody from the Secretary of the Navy's team. And I was like, oh my gosh. This was like a couple days later. And I was like, oh man, this can't be right. And then sure enough, it was one of the member, the, I think it was the chief of staff from Secretary of the Navy. And we chatted, and we're actually still in the works on trying to make that meeting work. So we're just trying to get schedules to align, because Secretary of the Navy, he's a very busy man, and he's going around different installations, getting the lay of the land, so I can completely understand. And then I was like, well, let me try this again with the Secretary of the Army. And so I did something similar. I said, hey, it was actually kind of a follow up kind of to that post. And then like a day or two later, I got a message from his comms team saying, yeah, let's chat. And we had a meeting, and we actually have something on the books coming up to meet in person. So I'll be heading up to the Pentagon to meet with the Secretary of the Army to talk about Hots and Cots and what we can do to work together. Because the roadblock that I run into is I'm not an officially endorsed DoD app. So they really, leaders, while they find value in what I'm doing, they can't endorse it. They can't go to their service members, whoever it is, and say, hey, go use Hots and Cots to post your reviews, whether they're good or bad. Because there are a lot of leaders out there. One of the questions I get asked is, do leaders push back? And I'm like, no, quite the opposite. They like this. They want to fix these issues. The problem is that information is not getting bubbled up to them. They want this information to fix these issues. So because I'm not an officially endorsed app, they can't go and say, hey, go use Hots and Cots. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish with these meetings. Like, hey, I want to work with you. I want service members to be able to use this, and you use this data to make informed decisions and know what your service members are facing.
Wow. Holy crap, Rob. If once you get that, and I'm just, speaking this into fruition here, that DOD little Pentagon symbol on the Hots and Cots, that's going to be fire, dog. Whenever that happens, hey, I'm saying it now. It's going to happen because it's going to happen. But that's wild to think that, you're already in play. People already know your name. People know the app, and it's gonna happen because it's the dominoes already fell. People already contacted you. Now it says we got to sync up, and it's getting to yes. It's just taking a little longer than usual, but you understand why. That's crazy, Rob. I'm in the presence greatness. I got to make an app now, a military app.
I'm hoping, and this, I want to make a difference on these with these soldiers living and service members living in barracks, like because these are real issues they have, and if I can make their quality of life a little bit better when they're back home, I mean that's great. Being deployed is another thing. That's a whole other situation. Like you're being deployed is part of it. You're gonna have crappy living situations. You're probably gonna have to eat crappy food for a little while, whatever that may look like. But when you go home, like you want to have clean barracks, clean rooms, no mold. You want your AC working if you have an AC installed in your place. Um, you you want to have food that's cooked appropriately, and we owe them that. Like that's that part of the contract when they sign up. Like I don't know about you, but when I remember like the recruiter was like, hey, you don't have to worry about food or your dining or your barracks when you're deployed, or when you go on these bases with the reserves when you get activated, like that's all taken care of. And even for like active duty, they tell you that, I'm sure they told you some sort of similar spiel. So I mean, I think part of that is there's this. I mentioned I grew up with like not running water at times and mold and bugs in my house. Like if I'm living up and growing up in that and I'm going into the military thinking I'm going to get away from that and I'm just getting the same thing, like I joined the military to get away from that, not to live in that same condition. So we owe that to our service members.
That's what's up, man. That's you transitioned back a little bit ago, a couple years ago, and now you're giving back to the community in a very impactful way. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I'm sure young service members appreciate it too. This is Rob, I know your time's precious. You got things to do, and we're not, me and you are not getting paid for this. Maybe you are, but I'm not, right?
Nope, no, I'm not.
But
You
here's
and
your
me both
plug.
are.
Here's your plug. You any last day rounds for the listeners? The floor is yours, and then we're gonna execute.
Yeah. If you're living in the barracks, if you're eating in those chow halls, junior enlisted, download Hots and Cots. It's on iOS, it's on Android. If you're not sure, go to hotscots.app. I mean, check out the site. Um, and it's anonymous. I'm not gonna if some commander comes knocking on my door asking for your email, I'm not gonna give it over. I'm not in anymore. Like I already have my 214. I am so I mean, I'm not you're or you just email me and I'll post a review on your behalf, like whatever that is, whether it's 1 star or 5 star. I mean, it's I the more folks post these reviews, the more impact I can make on folks' lives.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Where can they, if they want to know where Rob and Hots and Cots, where can they reach you at? Besides the app.
So you can find me on the app. You can find me on Twitter or what is now called X under hotscots_app. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or you can just go to hotscots.app and find me there as well.
Appreciate your time, Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Pit Talk, pulling pits and opinions with their host, Gunny G, Rob with Hots and Cots, where service members help service members, period. Follow, like, subscribe everywhere you get your podcast and on some social media platforms. Let us know how we're doing. Any criticism is good criticism, ladies and gentlemen. Me and Rob with Hots and Cots, we out. Rob, I'm going to reach out to you a little later for a picture for your video thumbnail. And thank you for your time. It's
Okay.
my pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, man. I
I'll see
really
you later.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye.
Stand by, contact. Ceasefire. Stand by, contact, contact. Ceasefire.
Pit Talk is a podcast featuring active service members who discuss their thoughts and opinions on various issues surrounding military life, current events, and history. The statements heard here are the opinions of its members and guests. These do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense and are not endorsed or sponsored in any way. Listener, viewer discretion advised.